welcome to The Founder Factor, where we dig into the strategies, ideas, and mindsets of some of South Carolina's most impactful entrepreneurs. So today on the show, we are joined by Didi Caldwell, who is the president and founding principal at Global Location Strategies and Global Location Technologies.
Yes. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So let's start off with just a quick description of what it is that your two businesses do and how they relate to each other.
Yes. So Global Location Strategies is a turnkey location strategy firm. So we offer site selection, incentive negotiations for expanding companies. So essentially, if a manufacturing company primarily is looking for a place to build more capacity, then we help them find the optimal place to do that around the world. And then we help them negotiate the best deal for that particular operation.
I see. Okay.
And then Global Location Technologies are technologies that we have developed in-house and also with partners that bring the science of site selection in a cloud-based format to our internal team at Global Location Strategies, but we also offer that externally for anyone that wants to use the science of site selection to help make location decisions.
Okay, so you kind of have the consulting side, that's the strategies piece, and then you have the technology side, which empowers the consulting side of the business. Okay, makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So how in the world did you get into this field?
Well, I've been doing site selection for over 2 decades now. So I worked for Fluor Daniel in Argentina back in the late 90s. And I ran into someone who ended up becoming a mentor for me. And he was doing a site selection project for Fluor Daniel. And I was helping him with some market research. And I said, tell me a little bit about this site selection. What does that mean? And he started to tell me, and I just fell in love with the idea because I love to travel. I love the idea of, helping corporations make impactful decisions that really impact not just their company, but also the communities in which they invest for generations to come. So I came back to the U.S., moved to Greenville, and started working for Fluor in the site selection group in 1998.
Okay.
And then several years later, I started my own firm. It was 2008, so it was great timing.
Yeah, it was really good timing.
But I had a unique opportunity to buy a business that I had been managing previously. So I had some revenues there to get me through, a year or two. And I really didn't think I wanted to do site selection anymore. I had small children and it was just a lot of travel and a big commitment. But 2008, 2009, there were a few projects that came my way. And I decided, well, I know how to do this. I must be pretty good at it because people are willing to pay me. Yeah. I have mouths to feed, so I guess this is what my business is going to be.
Yeah, let's do it. Makes sense. So with site selection, so you're working primarily with industrial companies, manufacturing companies, and you're consulting on, what are the factors that you consider in helping someone find the right site for their business?
Normally when we pick up is when they have already determined internally or with other consultants that they need new capacity to serve a particular market.
Okay.
And then we will help them determine where the best place is. And that's a function of, obviously the real estate is a big piece. So you've got to have a land to build on or a building to go into. But, workforce, utilities, logistics, taxes, incentives, environmental requirements, all of these things factor together to make a location good or to rule out locations.
Okay, I see.
And so in this business, you really have to know a little bit about a lot of different things. So I like to say that I'm an inch deep and a mile wide.
Yep.
And some people say, well, you're not giving yourself enough credit. And so I say, okay, I'm an inch deep and 2 miles wide.
That's funny. That's great. I like that saying a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had the opportunity to buy this business. So you bought this business that ultimately became Global Location Strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. So tell me a bit about that transition, going from working in the corporate world at Fluor Daniel, or is that what they're called now? Fluor.
It's just Fluor
Okay,
Corp.
Fluor, but at the time, Fluor Daniel. So what was that transition like going
So
from
I worked for Fluor and then I went to work for a smaller company and I was running that company that did something completely unrelated to site selection. It was called Enry Financial and it did, we were capital advisors for K-12 school districts that were using installment purchase financing to finance their capital needs. Okay. So it was still focused on facilities and finance, but the legislature in 2007 passed a law that said that school districts could no longer use that form of financing, which was bad for our business, but also bad, I think, for school districts around the state. So we had existing contracts that we had to service. So I went to the owners and said, just let me buy the business out of future revenues. And, I will continue to serve these customers. And if there's something that comes along that we need to join together again, we can do so. Mm-hmm. And to my shock and amazement and horror, they said, okay.
Horror is a key part of that.
Key part of that. I was recently divorced. I had 2 small children. Oh. So this was kind of crazy looking back on it. But I just felt like, this was an opportunity of a lifetime and I really couldn't let it go.
Right.
As it turned out, 2008, 2009 was a pretty challenging time to be working in site selection. But, at the time, it was just me and one other partner. And so we were able to survive. Mm-hmm. And so I learned a lot from that experience. If I had known then what I know now, I probably would have been too afraid to do it. But, being an entrepreneur is all about taking risk and
sometimes ignorance is key.
Sometimes ignorance is key, exactly, or bliss, or
or some combination.
Combination of those, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So kind of piggybacking off of that, looking back, what would you have done differently? I know you said that you might not have, knowing what you know now, you might not have been crazy enough to do it. But
right.
What are the practical takeaways that you have from your experience now that you would have applied to your younger self starting?
Right. This? I think. This concept of investing in order to get higher returns is a little bit hard to do sometimes when you're, sort of hand to mouth or operating on a shoestring budget. But investing in things like brand and image, referral networks, not just fine. I had great people. I was very, very fortunate to have some really excellent people that worked for me and with me. And, but I would say it was a little bit more accidental. I was just very fortuitous. Mm-hmm. And I think I would have been a little bit more deliberate about that. But I just, I think someone was looking out for me because I just got really lucky with the people that I had. Now that we're 15 people, I have to be a little bit more deliberate about it because, you make some mistakes here and there, but you really try to find the right people that are the right culture fit. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, so really investing and making those types of investments that are going to pay off in the long term, I probably would have done that earlier.
Sure. What was the most formative investment for you that you made in the business?
Well, besides the technology, which obviously spawned another business, but I really do think that I made the decision probably about 5 or 6 years ago to invest in a full-time business development person. Mm-hmm. And she not only focuses on business development, she's really focused on growth and how to, strategically, how do we grow? And she, has led us down this path of developing referral networks and also establishing our brand and our market, our name in the marketplace as really excellent. So I think that was probably the best investment. It takes time to pay off. I would say that we really didn't see it paying off until about 3 or 4 years in. But now it's, shown that it's definitely been worth it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. So I want to jump back to a point from a bit before talking about starting this business. And did you start it in 2008, like just before?
2008.
Was that,
December 1, 2008.
Oh, that's wild.
Yes. 2008 was great.
Yeah.
2009, not so much.
Yeah, not so much. Yep, I understand. I started my business in January of 2020, which I always laugh at. That was wonderful timing.
Yes.
But anyway, so when the going got tough in 2008 and 2009, acutely tough, how did you hold your head high? Like, what was that place that you got strength from?
Well, I mean, the fortunate thing was I did have some revenue still coming in from the customers that I was serving. For the business that I had bought. But, there were a lot of times when I just didn't take a paycheck.
Yeah.
And, my credit cards got used quite a bit.
Yep.
Especially when it came tax time in 2009 to pay for the money that I had made in 2008. And I guess I just underestimated how big that impact was going to be. Uh-huh. But I think one of the things that's really key for me, and I think it's one of the things when we think about supporting an entrepreneurial society and an environment where entrepreneurs can succeed, is that I knew I had a safety net. Mm-hmm. I have great parents, and I knew that, they weren't going to let me and my children starve. So I was able to take risks. Even though I never had to go to them and ask for a loan, I knew that I could.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, not everybody has that for sure. And so I think one of the things I'm really passionate about is supporting economic development capacity in communities that we serve. And a part of that is supporting entrepreneurs with a particular focus on minority and women-owned businesses. So I think that's just something we need to keep in mind when we're looking at what it takes to foster an environment which will be entrepreneurial.
Sure. What do you tell other women starting their own businesses?
Take a deep breath. And not to be rash, but, sometimes you can't evaluate every single risk. If you think about it and think about it and think about it, you'll never, if you're waiting for the perfect moment, it's kind of like having children. There is no perfect moment. At some point, you just have to make the leap. And the way that you succeed is to just get in the car and start going. I mean, you're never going to learn how to drive from a parked car. So even if you don't go very far, just take the first step and see where that will lead.
Yeah, one foot in front of another.
Exactly.
Sure. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. This podcast is brought to you by Designly, South Carolina's top-rated app development company, and Word of Web, your partner in smarter website strategy and design. Welcome back to The Founder Factor. We are chatting with Didi Caldwell on today's episode. All right, well, let's jump back into it here.
Right.
So now I want to talk a bit about what your intentions were with the business starting out. Did you see it being something that you did forever, that you were able to grow and scale? Was it more of a lifestyle business? Walk me through that thought process.
Yeah, I think initially it was more of like a lifestyle business. I just wanted to have a great job doing what I love to do, which was site selection and incentive negotiations. But I have this character of I love to quote Hamilton, and so I can never be satisfied.
I quote that all the time. Yes.
And so I have this insatiable desire to just continue to improve and continue to grow and to build something. And so it soon was apparent that just a lifestyle business was not going to be enough to satisfy me. And so once I realized that, then I really started thinking about, how can I grow the business into something that has intrinsic value just beyond my ability to do consulting projects. And so now it's grown into something where I feel like the brand and the organization and all of the people that work there really lend themselves. They're the ones that create the value, as well as the technology. So the technology was really about, selling consulting hours. It's kind of like hotel rooms or an airline seat, that once that hour has passed or once that plane has flown from Greenville to Atlanta, that revenue is lost forever. Yeah. You can never sell that seat again, and you can never sell that consulting hour. So the idea behind the technology was not just to make us more efficient, but also to develop something that had the ability to, once it was created, could be licensed over and over again. So about I think it was 2018 in our annual retreat, we came up with the vision for the future, which was to develop a product or a service for every corporate location decision.
Wow.
And at that time, 8 or 9 people sitting in Greenville, South Carolina, could not offer a service for every corporate location decision. But by developing the technology, which can be licensed infinitely, we're able to offer a product that brings the science of site selection to corporations globally so that we can offer them the ability to have a look into what we do and bring the value to their projects.
Sure. Was that kind of the turning point for the business then? Do you feel like going from more that consulting model to more of I guess now you just have both, right? You have the consulting side and then the product side.
That's right.
How do you manage leading those two business models? Those two worlds are so different.
They are very different. And it's been, our model up until now has been very much about leveraging the infrastructure of the consulting business to support the technology business. Now we're getting to a point where the technology business is large enough to merit its own infrastructure and its own corporate structure. So we haven't made that change yet, and I'm not sure that we will, in the near term, but certainly within the next year or so, I could see us bifurcating those two companies and letting them establish their own identity independent of one another.
Right. Okay. Well, clearly whatever you're doing is working for you. I have a couple stats written down here. I saw that the business was named to Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies in 2021.
And 2022.
And 2022.
Yes.
Not bad.
Yes.
And then the business doubled in size in just 2022 alone. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
That is just incredible.
And part of that, I think part of that is due to the work that we have been doing on branding and search engine optimization and content and referral networks. Mm-hmm. But certainly part of it was due to adding staff because in a consulting business, a lot of it is about hours. And then another big part of it, which we have absolutely no control over, is that once the pandemic hit, we weren't really sure what was going to happen. And, having lived through 2008, on March 13th, I brought everybody into the office for one last time. And I said, go home, buckle down. We're going to keep doing what we're doing, but don't make any major decisions. Mm-hmm. Don't buy a car, don't buy a house, don't have a baby,
Advice.
So what did they do? They bought houses. We have the COVID triplets, you know.
Boredom sets in and then anything's fair game,
But we were really, really fortunate in that we had a little bit of a dip from, say, March to probably July or August. And in August, I think everyone, kind of got their kids back to school. They didn't necessarily drop them off, but they started them back on their, their virtual schools. And they said, okay, we've got pent-up demand that we've got to meet. And so activity just really started to take off. Mm-hmm. And it has been nonstop since then. Mm-hmm. In 25 years, I've never quite seen anything like this. So I definitely have to give credit to just the overall economy for how successful we've been.
Sure. Well, it sounds like you can take a lot of the credit yourself and your team. It sounds like you have a really great team behind you.
Well, I think we were just, it hit at a good time for us.
Yeah.
We were really poised for growth at that point. And, sometimes those two things come together and in this case it did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, so when you reflect on your own personal journey with the business, what are the ways in which you have changed from where you started off now?
I remember one day about 3 or 4 years ago, I was sitting in the office of our marketing agency, our branding agency, and I had my operations director there. I had my VP of strategic development. I had a PR person that was in there. And then I think there were 3 or 4 people in the room from the branding agency. And I sort of panicked for a minute. And all I saw was just dollar signs. I'm like, all of these people, I'm paying all of them to be here in one way or another. And I kind of panicked. But I just calmed myself down and I said, this is what it's like to build a business. Mm-hmm. You have to make these investments. And even though this is money going out, it's ultimately going to represent money coming back in. Mm-hmm. So I think just growing in confidence to be able to make those kinds of investments without having, panic attacks around it.
Yep.
And then I think also just learning how to build culture and how to select people that really fit that culture and then trusting them to do the right thing. I don't micromanage. I try to, give people enough leeway to be able to do their job. And if they need me, I try to be there for them. I certainly am still learning. It's, I'm a work in progress. But I do feel like I have gotten much better at that.
Is that something you felt like you just already did somewhat naturally, or has that been like a really intentional training process for you?
No. I feel like I'm good at leading, projects or, initiatives or things like that. But I didn't really have very much experience managing people. And I've definitely made plenty of mistakes along the way. So I like to think that I had some natural ability, but a lot of it's just practice.
Right.
It's just really practice. And even if you're not good at it, you can learn how to adopt some of these management techniques and learn how to, build a culture and motivate people and trust and delegate to those that you've selected around you. My husband is the director for natural gas at Fountain Inn, the city of Fountain Inn. And he's been a manager for decades. And so he is a great sounding board for me. And so I come to him with, I've got this issue at work. How should I handle this? And he always has some words of wisdom. And then I also have, peers in my mentor group that help me work through some of these issues. It seems like every time we get together, we talk about people and people and people and cash flow and people and sales and the economy and people. So people is always comes back to people. Yeah.
Yep. So that actually brings up another question. How do you even know what it is that you need to work on as a leader? Because you're kind of at the top of the food chain, so to speak, and sometimes it's hard to develop systems of feedback for you as that leader. So
yes.
How do you go about thinking about that?
Well, in my peer group, we establish rocks for every quarter. And so we hold each other accountable. So these are just goals or things that we want to achieve over that next quarter. So we definitely do that. I would really like to look more into the EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And we do some of that with my peer group and the mentor group that I'm in. But that's one of the things I'm looking forward to in 2023 is implementing, because I think that is a system that is tried and true that many companies use to keep not just the boss accountable, but everybody else accountable to exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And then you make decisions based on, what you're supposed to be focused on. So I'm still learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Aren't we all?
Yes.
So here's a kind of artsy question for you. If you could, put up a billboard or a big sign in your office for all of your employees to see, all of your customers, what would be on that sign?
That's a very easy question.
Ooh,
because we already have a billboard in our office. Oh,
perfect. It's not artsy. It is totally not theoretical.
Well, we have this beautiful mural that was designed by a local designer, and it says, "Make your mark on the map." But that's not it. Our purpose and the reason that we get up every single day and do what we do is to match companies and communities for mutual sustainable prosperity. And the type of projects that we work on are generational in their impact. And so we want to match the company and the community in a very responsible way so that they can both prosper and benefit for decades to come. So that's a very easy question.
Yeah, that's a beautiful statement. Well worded. Yep. So you need another mural is what I'm hearing. A bit of a bigger one.
Yes. Well, we do have in our lobby when you come in, we have that on a sign.
Okay. Okay. Great. Well, that's a really interesting answer. So wrapping up here, just one more question for you. What is the founder factor? Like, what is that variable that makes for a successful or impactful entrepreneur?
Well, I think, certainly dedication. It's not easy. But my husband, I'm an eternal optimist. I come into most things with rose-colored glasses. So I would call that optimism. My husband calls that delusion. But I do think that if you're going to be a founder and you're going to be entrepreneurial, at some point you have to be optimistic, because if you let yourself be bogged down in all of the things that possibly can go wrong, it's paralyzing. So I just try to channel that optimism and mitigate risk where I can, but not be too intimidated by it.
Great answer. Two sides of the same coin, delusion and optimism.
That's right.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to The Founder Factor. Feel free to follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your content. See you next time.